had turned to the Protestant Mary Stuart, James's older daughter and the Princess of Orange, and her husband William, for deliverance, and meant to put them on the English throne in James's place. Yet as I walked slowly down the stairs, I could not help but think how irrevocable each step might be. My husband and I had together agreed that this was the right course to take for our consciences, but the risk was fearsome indeed. If the rebellion failed, retribution would be swift for those who had supported it. We would forfeit all our property and estates, and have our titles and privileges stripped from us. We would be imprisoned in the Tower until tried, and when, not if, we were convicted, we would be beheaded for all the world to watch. The only legacy we would leave for our little son and 3 daughters would be poverty and disgrace. And as for the poor innocent babe I now carried within my womb, why, I could not even guarantee birth and life, or the eternal salvation of a Christian baptism. The lieutenant waiting for me in the parlour was very young and respectful. So young he flushed like a girl when I greeted him. That was the power not only of my rank, but of my beauty as well, displayed to best effect in a rich green velvet gown with deep cuffs of Venetian lace. He wore the yellow coat of the old Duke of York's regiment, the first with which my John had served too. "So what has brought you here with your men, Lieutenant?" I asked, smiling. I wished to put him at his ease, the better to coax from him whatever news he might know. "I don't believe you've come simply to ask after my health." "No, my lady." He took a deep breath and looked down at the floor, shying away from my gaze, the way most people do when bearing ill tidings. "My orders are to confine you here to Lord Tyrconnell's lodgings, my lady, and to admit no one other than your servants." "Am I to know the reason, Lieutenant?" I asked lightly, for John had warned me to pretend as little knowledge as possible. An officer and 6 of his men seem quite excessive for the care of one lone baroness. "No, my lady." At last he did raise his gaze to meet mine. "I regret that I must inform you that your husband, General Lord Churchill, has betrayed His Majesty in the most grievous manner possible. Yesterday, his lordship and His Majesty George, the Prince of Denmark, fled to the camp of William, Prince of Orange, at Axminster." Speechless with surprise, I felt my knees weaken beneath me, and I dropped into the nearest chair. Of course I'd known that John had planned to go to William once the prince had landed on English soil, but not so soon as this. He was supposed to have sent me word, a sign, so that the Princess Anne and I could have left London first, to be safely with our husbands and beyond the king's reach. But no word had come, and now I was left with soldiers to watch me close as a hungry cat at a mouse's hole in the wainscoting. The lieutenant hurried to my side, bending on one knee beside my chair. "I am most sorry, my lady, very sorry," he said, his voice full of the hand-wringing helplessness that young men seem to feel when confronted with an unhappy woman. "Shall I send for your maid, my lady?" I shook my head, gathering my wits as well as my courage. At least I knew now that John was safe. I could take comfort in that, and I would be strong. I must be strong, for John's sake, as well as our children's. "You say Lord Churchill has been denounced as a traitor. Does that mean you have come to arrest me for the sin of being his wife?" The lieutenant hesitated. "No, my lady, those are not my orders." But the words "not yet" hung between us, unspoken, yet understood. I would have to act as swiftly as I could. "Might you tell me this, Lieutenant?" I asked. "How many other officers and lords have gone with Lord Churchill to Axminster?" The young man hesitated, his fingers working nervously over the pommel of his sword being all the answer I needed to my question. The rebellion was succeeding, and fast. John had guessed that support would be strong in the army and in the navy, and that the great lords, too, would reject James and choose William in his place. Thank God he'd been right. "They say the king means to hold fast here in London, my lady," the lieutenant said instead, freely giving me what I would have begged next. "They say he's on the road now, with 2,000...